In the domain industry, Australia is a country that punches above its weight considering its size. I sit down with two of the top investors and brokers in that space to understand the unique culture, networking, communication down there, discuss domain name values, trends, and also unique relationship and impending changes with the registrar for .com.au and all the AU domains, what might be changing in the future. Enjoy the show. Media Options is the industry-leading domain broker specializing in domain acquisitions, high-value domain sales, and domain name consultation. As pioneers and thought leaders on the subject of the domain aftermarket and domain name value, plus through their clear domain acquisition service, Media Options offers startups and established corporations an unparalleled scope of high-value domain options, providing access to domain names and curation technologies not available elsewhere. Media Options believes in the power of a great domain name and is dedicated to helping you obtain yours. Call or email today to put a domain to work for you.
FD was built by domain investors to increase your inquiries, sales, and profit. Forget spreadsheets and archived emails. Manage your entire investment portfolio in one place using a secure and completely confidential platform. Learn more at ft.com. That's EFTY. ft.com.
Hey, Sherpa Network. Welcome to DomainSherpa Down Under. I am super excited that Ed Keay-Smith and Rob, how do you pronounce your last name? Rob Kaay?
Kaay. Yeah.
Oh, just with an Aussie accent. Kaay.
That's it.
All right. I'm so excited the two of you woke up early just to do a Sherpa with me. Thank you. I want to do a quick intro to each of you. Ed, owner of digital agency Online Impact. You founded it 17 years ago when the internet was a baby. And basically in that you combine domains with developed websites and marketing. Also one of the first domain investor podcasts that you've developed, ozdomainer.com, founded in 2007. And now you've transitioned to mylivelihood.com.au with your wife, Lois. Yes?
Correct.
I want to hear a lot more about that, but let's give Rob a quick intro. So you, Rob, one of Australia's top domain brokers, you own and operate dbr.com.au, and then together, the two of you host and produce domainer.com.au, the Domainer Show. Yes?
That is it.
How long have you guys been doing that?
Couple of years now.
Couple of years.
Okay.
Couple of years. Not consistently, let's be clear.
we can, well, what are we up to now? We've done nearly 30 shows or 25 shows.
23, something like that. Same.
It was about 18 months ago that I bought domainer.com.au, the domain name and the blog off Ned O'Meara, who created it a couple of years earlier and did an amazing job with it. And literally the day I bought domainer.com.au, Ed rung my phone and said, we need to turn this into a video show, Domainer Show as well. And I said, you know what, you're right. I'll meet you for a beer. And then we just started.
Is that the first time you two met in person?
No.
No.
Is that the first time you had a beer?
No.
No.
Oh no, the second time wasn't the first time we had a beer. Actually, the first time we just had a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or something. So it was pretty.
That's right.
It was pretty tame.
And we talked about drums and music because we're both
both musos. Yeah.
Oh really? Drums? Both of you are drummers?
I'm a drummer. No, I'm a drummer. Rob's a bass player.
And so we're the rhythm section. We just organically get along because we're like bass and drums.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild. No kidding. Okay, Australia is just a mystery to me. I know you got your fancy Gold Coast, and I know that you say Perth. I can't even do it now.
Perth. Just
but
say
I know
Perth.
you don't say it right. But where do you both live in relation to the country, and where do you live in relation to each other?
Take it away, Rob.
Okay. Whenever people think about Australia, from my travels, of course, they've heard of Sydney, which is on the east coast. If you hop in a car in Sydney and drive west for 4 days, you will get to Perth, which is the complete other side, west coast of Australia. And that's where Ed and I live.
Okay. And it's down south too? On the south?
Yeah, further down the
Yeah.
bottom of Western Australia.
Okay.
To give perspective, Texas would fit into Western Australia 3.5 times.
Whoa, and that's just Western Australia. Okay.
That's just
Now,
Western Australia.
Jen Sale makes me jealous because she lives on an island and I've seen the pictures. And I thought she was kind of near where you just described but a little further southeast.
I think she's on the east coast, like, isn't it Bribie Island or something?
Yeah, I think you're right. She's on the
She's
east
still
coast.
on the east coast, but we've got our own 15-kilometre island, only about 10 k's off Perth, called Rottnest Island. if we're getting jealous of islands,
You're having
here.
an island competition. All right.
Yeah. The reason I'm laughing is because Rob owns rottnestisland.com.au.
Oh, I do.
That's where this
yeah.
was going. So
That's-
you're
that's
Mike
why
Tiger
I'm
of
laughing.
random small islands off the coast.
Yeah,
That's
I
it.
think I'm banned from the island because they don't like that I own the geo domain name of the island. But I'm kidding.
But it is famous for quokkas. So
What?
lots of famous people go onto the island. They're like large rats. Well, Rottnest is actually it actually means rat. So rat's nest. That's where the name came from Dutch.
And they're
language.
actually these cute little things, marsupials
They are.
called quokkas.
They're beautiful. Yeah.
And they're not big rats, Ed. They're small
No,
kangaroos.
No,
That's
I've just been funny. So I wasn't selling it. I'm not
mini
doing the right
kangaroos.
PR.
And they're the only place on Earth that you can see these mini kangaroos. And whenever celebrities in the world fly to Perth, they go to Rottnest Island and they take a selfie with this little mini kangaroo.
Oh, well, clearly I have not been paying enough attention because that sounds even cuter than like a koala bear or something. It sounds adorable.
They're pretty cute.
No,
But not as cute
And
as a
like,
koala
now,
bear.
lower down the
not as
list.
cute. They are
Okay.
cute though. Look up when you're on doing a search. Look up Roger Federer, the tennis player, quokka, Rottnest Island,
How
and
do you spell
he
Crocker.
quokka.
It's Quokka.
Oh my God. And do either of you own
Quokka? No.
quokka.com.au?
I'm
No.
trying every day to acquire it.
Oh boy.
It used to be a popular newspaper, like a trading newspaper. So I don't know whether that was the domain name that it resided on.
Wow.
think
So
it was.
Roger Federer started it all, I see. But I want to know about the Australian domain market. So first of
Yes.
all, there's kind of we were ahead of the curve because we scheduled this call before there are a bunch of really
NamesCon.
big sales lately. First, quick overview. What are the top handful of sales that have happened pretty recently? And about when did they happen?
Okay, about 6 months ago, one of our friends who's been on our domainer.com.au show, Sean McGowan, he paid 400,000 Australian dollars for money.com.au. We'd have to do the maths how much that works out to in US dollars.
260 odd thousand US.
Great, Ed. If you can please keep doing this while I mention these Australian figures.
And it wasn't 6 months ago. Just saying, it was a bit longer than that. It was like
Was it?
towards the end of 2018.
Okay, so let's just say that's relatively recent, but real recent ones. Actually, about 6 months ago, pay.com.au, PAY, that sold for 168,000 Australian.
It's about 100,000 US roughly. Don't look, people watching this, don't quote us on the, obviously we're spitballing the number here for conversion rates.
Well, they can quote us because these are facts.
Not if they're coming out of our mouth. They're not.
I mean,
They're approximations, Rob.
I'll just mention three more. Broker.com.au sold for 100,000 Australian. Sleep.com.au sold for 100,000. That was in the last couple of months. lifeinsurance.com.au sold for 100,000. That was in the last couple of months, Australian dollars.
Yeah.
So
Right.
the .com.au ccTLD for premium 1 or 2 word domain names is quite up there. They're holding their value.
Yeah. But we punch above our weight, I believe, in terms of the value of the name, considering the size of the country is only 25 million people.
True.
The actual ratio of what we get for our names, because we're very highly internet advanced, not advanced. That's not the word. We know we've been going as long as the US has in terms of established internet, business, commerce. So it's not like we're in we're a new country to the internet. We've been around for the whole time. So
No, I feel like there are certain countries that are very active in the domain market, and Australia has always been one of them. And but you also have you participate in the global market, but you also have your very specific own market, and that's just really, really interesting, the way that it's been developing, especially of late. So what else is going on in this market? You've mentioned that there have been some pretty decent private sales as well. While I expect that what you mean by private is private, what can you tell us about the dollar amounts, the trends, the keyword versus brandable? What are you seeing in these private sales, the higher dollar private sales?
you go,
first, Rob.
Okay. The premium one, what I call premium in Australia.com.au land is, these one word dictionary word domain names, kind of like in every other TLD. So I'm finding that, one of our friends, Luke, sold link.com.au for 66,000 a couple of months ago. That was a private sale, but he publicly,
Sure.
told everyone about that price. I own 1,700 domain names myself. They're all .com.au. I think that's actually a bit too much. I think I want to kind of get that down to 800 domain names. And I don't just have those domain names as a domain investor, but also as an entrepreneur, because I run about 9 businesses at a time, and I like to, which is people around me know I don't have much time because I'm a bit silly like that. But I bite off a bit more than I can chew sometimes. But it's almost like strands of spaghetti, the way I treat businesses. I throw them against the wall and see which couples stick, and sell a couple off and start a few new ones. So I like to have domain names on the boil, ready to use for a new business idea I come up with.
Very smart. So do you think that, are most of your transactions done via brokers, or are they usually done through a marketplace, through your marketplace? Where are .com.au domains primarily bought and sold?
With .com.au domain names, the whois displays the registrant's email address. So it's actually, we don't have privacy settings in Australia for our ccTLD. So you actually have to display your email address, and it has to be the correct email address when you own an Australian domain name. So it's quite easy to reach out to the owner and ask them if they'd like to sell their domain name in that way. We've tried to have some marketplaces, but since the year 2000, so for 20 years, we've actually had a clause in our policy that said you can quote me on this, it says you are not allowed to buy a .com.au domain name for the sole purpose of resale. So it's literally, the policy is stated, you're not allowed to buy a domain name to sell it. But there's ways around that, and you're allowed to sell it, but you're not allowed to sell it to buy it for the sole purpose of reselling it. but actually at this moment in time, there's new policy rules finally coming in for .com.au where that sentence is finally being deleted from policy. So for the first time in history for Australian ccTLDs, we're going to be able to park a domain name and literally put for sale on it. We haven't been able to do that before.
Oh, that's fascinating. I did not realize that. I wanted to ask about the process for registering .com.au, but I had no idea there was that much more to it. So what is the process to register .com.au? You just need to supply an Australian address or what? It's more complicated.
You have to have an ABN number or a trademark, pretty much.
And what is
so an ABN number is an Australian business number. So I guess that's why we have been able to hold some decent value behind our domain names, because Australians trust the .com.au domain name because they believe it to be an Australian brand that owns it. Because not just anyone can just randomly, like if you literally go to one of the mainstream guys like GoDaddy and try and register Australian domain name, they'll ask you for your ABN. And if you don't have one, or if you put in a fake one, they'll buy the name and it gets deleted a couple of weeks later. So you have to be a legitimate business. The way that international companies have been able to buy, including American companies, an Australian domain name is by paying an Australian lawyer $1,000 to start a trademark application. And in the past, international companies have been able to just, as long as you start a trademark application, even before it's approved, that has allowed you to buy a .com.au domain name. But these new rules, it looks like that loophole's going to kind of be closed, and you're going to have a legitimate trademark, not just be applying for one pretty soon.
Interesting. And so how did this get decided? Do domain investors have any relationship or input in these types of decisions at the registry level?
I'd like to say we do. Unfortunately, our governing organisation, which is not the Australian government, it's endorsed by the Australian government. They're called AUDA, which is Australian Domain Administration, auda.org.au. Unfortunately, they, even I guess to this day, have been quite against domain investors and against companies owning a number of domain names, really, to tell you the truth. We've reached out to them a number of times as domain investors, and we've tried to let them, to get them to see why it's important for companies and entrepreneurs to own a number of domain names. I mean, 2 years ago, Auda created this organisation called the PRP, which was the Policy Review Panel, to review the policies of owning Australian domain names. And a lot of domain investors kind of thought it was a little bit unfair in the way they were looking at these policy changes. And they were trying to bring in this clause that says if you own more than, a number of domain names, say they came up with a figure of 10, then you're a domain warehouser, a lot of these negative terms. So the domaining community, including a lot of people affiliated with domainer.com.au, a lot of our regular readers, we all did band together and, put our votes in legitimately to try and go against a lot of this stuff. And I think we actually ran some email campaigns, some public service announcement campaigns, and reached out to thousands of people. And I think we were quite successful in stopping some of the more hardline negative policy changes coming in. And in this moment in time, new policy and licensing rules are literally, they're a few minutes away from coming in, like a month or two. And mostly it's a positive change for domain investors coming.
That's good that it's mostly positive. I mean, take what you can get, right? Yeah. So as we're talking about .com.au, what about all your options are what? .org.au and .net.au? Or don't you have a third one? Okay. Go. You're already ready to answer.
There is a third one. There's a .asn.au association, others, but really most people in Australia can really only get the .com.au or the .net.au. You've got to be a registered organisation to qualify to get the .org.au. Unlike the .org, where anyone can get it, you actually have to have a legitimate organisation, not-for-profit type association sort of thing. So there are restrictions to that. So most people, if they're registering an Australian domain, it's a .com.au or a .net.au. And look, it's very similar. It's a sort of like .net.au is the poor cousin to the .com.au. Half the time, if you've got it, people are going to forget and type in .com.au. I think everything that you guys talk about, and look, I invest in .coms and .nets and a whole host of other extensions as well, not just the .com.au. And everything that translates in the .com world translates to us in a smaller way with a few added rules, which I think are in a lot of ways beneficial. But it's a very similar landscape. Keyword terms are, we base the keyword terms on looking at stuff like Google searches, and everything that's done to sort of qualify a .com we would do for a .com.au. And the thing that we have to always really impress upon people is that we absolutely agree. Rob and I have no arguments that .com is king in the global sense of the word, but not in Australia. .com.au is king beyond imagination compared to .com. I mean, you'll see .coms, but in Australia, you'll see .com occasionally, and typically it's international companies that are running that as an extension, or any other company that can get it. Like I've got my online impact, I've got .com and .com.au because I do international business as well. So it's always common sense. If you can do international work, you need to have the .com. Because .com.au is not really recognised or easy to rank outside of Australia.
So say, I know in Canada, if even an outside entity is going to sell something, let's say, I'll just make it easy, Reader's Digest, right? Reader's Digest has to produce a different periodical for Canada because it's required to have something like 35% of the content be supplied by Canadian writers, or else they have to pay an exorbitant tax, right? Like the same flip-flops that I can buy at the dollar store, my aunt in Canada could buy for, $40, $45, the same like super cheap Chinese flip-flops, but a nice quality Canadian flip-flop she can get for a reasonable price in between, just because of the way they tax and want to encourage that. So what I'm asking is, why is .com.au so popular? Is it because the products and services from an Australian company are priced differently? Or is it because of the community mentality of Australia? Or is it because it means you can get that product or service there and you're sick of .com where it's coming from somewhere else and you can't even get it, or you can't get it delivered or something?
I would say it's a combination, because a lot of products and services that are based on a .com.au address, quite often they are Australian companies with Australian products servicing the Australian marketplace. But we don't have those sort of restrictions that I'm aware of that Canada does. No. I mean, we can import anything we want from China and sell it on the .com.au, or we can, I haven't heard of any of that. That sounds like a pretty tough restriction, but I can see what they're doing, why Canada would do it. It's sort of,
I mean, they've been doing it since I was a little kid. So, and if you were doing it, you'd know.
That's right. We don't do it. We don't do that.
No, not that I'm aware of, for sure.
It's actually not a bad idea, but somehow organically we're doing that. Because if we look at the data, there's something like 3.3 million Australian ccTLD domain names registered. Out of that roughly 3.3 million, 88% of them are .com.au. So it's, as Ed was saying before, it's nearly 90% of Australian businesses have a .com.au.
Wow.
Yeah, so it is the dominant thing here, and it'll only be, I'm just pulling this figure out of the air, but I'd only say it's 5 to 10% of Australian businesses that are using a .com to represent their business online. It's, unless they're international, like Ed's saying. But if you're an Australian business, I don't need a .com because I'm not looking for American or English or Chinese customers. If I'm local, I'm .com.au. And somehow we managed to do that at the start. Like if we really want to go back in Australian domain name history, there's one guy called Robert Ells, E-L-Z. He was at Melbourne IT, Melbourne University, Melbourne IT, the company where it started, where he's the guy in like 1995 when he rang up America and said, hello, can we please have the internet in Australia? And at that time, because there was .com, he said, well, it was literally one guy, and he at Melbourne Uni, and he said, okay, they've got .com, we'll have .com.au. At that moment in time, if he had decided single-handedly we should have .au, that's how it would have been. So he kind of created that from that moment forward.
That's super cool. And I just looked him up real quick. Then he did the same for Thailand later on. No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh,
yep.
wow.
There you go.
Very interesting.
Yeah. And that's a good segue. That's a good segue talking about .au, Rob, because that's the other big question is when are we getting just the .au for getting rid of the .com? And that's what we classify as direct registration. So, and that's in the works too, and probably isn't too far away, but it's been talked about for years and years and years. But it's no different to the .uk for the, to go along with the .co.uk or .nz to go along with .co.nz for New Zealand. There's mixed opinions about whether it's up in the air about how it's going to go and actually if it's going to come off. I think it's a given that it's going to go ahead. What are your thoughts?
If we look at the Netherlands, for example, .nl, they straight away started with .nl as their ccTLD. They didn't have .com.nl. And recently, when I was looking at that, correct me if I'm wrong, their population is, I think, a little bit under Australia's, but they have 1.7 million .nls registered. So as Ed's saying, we're about to have .au come in, but as we've seen in .nz for New Zealand and .uk, those markets didn't really take off, and we're expecting ours won't really take off either when direct.au comes out.
Yeah. So it seems to me in my experience that primarily the only countries that did this .com, country TLD, ccTLD, or .org or whatever. It seems like it was a handful of countries with a history of British, I don't know what to say.
Commonwealth connection?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so like Canada didn't do it, but a lot of those countries did it. And so when the UK, they didn't transition, but they added just plain old .uk, the way that now that was a long time ago, like 10 plus years ago, 10ish, right about 10.
Can't remember.
I think so.
I think it may have been less, but it didn't work.
Yeah, well, but the way that they rolled it out, I thought was smart, that it was like, if you already have the .com or the .org, then you have a total preference of some way to preserve that. And I don't think that they ratchet.
They're like first rights.
Yeah.
But you had a 2-year window. You had a 2-year window when it was released.
Yeah,
that's right. And whoever owns the .co.uk had first rights to the direct.uk.
Correct.
See, as domain investors, we rallied to try and, that makes sense, right? Especially when 88% of our .com.au ccTLD is .com.au, no other extension. So we said, you know, it makes sense for the .com.au holder to have first rights for their direct.au. That actually got rejected. And for some reason, when .au comes out, whoever owns the .com.au, the .net.au, the .id.au, the .org.au, they're all going to have equal rights to the .au. And so at the moment, the policy rules state that all of those domain name holders can fight amongst themselves about who gets it, which is going to be quite messy, I think.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to like some sort of bidding process or tokens. Like it's not as simplistic as I think it should be in terms of just how it was done with the .co.uk. I don't know how New Zealand did theirs, but I think the end of the point is, my opinion is just a money making process for registrars. You know, so I think.
I mean, off the cuff, it sounds good. Shorter is better. And what is this extra thing in the middle for anyway? It seems like a waste, but it's already established. We have a use case, certainly with the UK. I don't know much about the NZ one either. But with the UK, you have a use case there that it wasn't really adopted. However, Twitter wasn't a big deal 10 years ago. Now everything's about being even shorter, not just for the ability to remember the domain, but also to share it, to post socially. The shorter it is, the better.
Yeah.
True. And me and Ed don't have Ed and I don't have a crystal ball. I'm picking up my own grammar. In 10 years, we may look silly, and .au may be king in Australia. But for now, I think it's just important. How it's implemented is very important, and I don't think it's going to be implemented correctly.
Time will tell.
Does the ICA, the Internet Commerce Association, do they participate at all or have any voice with, I forget how you say it between your accents.
AUDA. 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 Yes. Is it Matt? What's the name of it? No, who's the gentleman from, from the Internet Commerce Association? Who's the head guy that runs it?
Nat Cohen is pretty active.
Okay.
An attorney, and Camila Sikowitz.
It would have been that. It would have been that. And I apologise if I've forgot your name there, because he wrote a very, very good letter going back sort of 18 months ago when we were going through a lot of the turmoils of AUDA and some of the proposed policies they were going to put in place. And he wrote a very long, very, very thorough letter explaining how bad an idea that was going to be, and put it to AUDA. And I think that had some weight as well. We've got a copy of it somewhere, but
I just hopped on to domainer.com.au, Ed, and I just typed in the search box internet commerce, and it came up.
Cool.
The Internet Commerce Association wrote a very well-informed submission about a year ago, which I think did help with shape some of these new policy changes. So, ICA did a great job.
Phenomenal resource. Yeah,
they are.
And Nat Cohen is a brilliant, not only attorney, but a businessman, a probably negotiator, but that's not the word I'm looking for. He's just really good at not even getting into a negotiation, just sharing the wealth of his perspective and as a gift, and it is incorporated because it has so much authority behind it. So that's really, really cool that that the ICA is behind that for you guys too. Hey, how is COVID impacting y'all?
We're living the dream, really, in terms of not being affected by it. We're quite lucky, actually. The rest of Australia kind of seems us sees us as an island within an island, because somehow I guess our premier closed the borders pretty quickly. And so we isolated ourselves. So we've been lucky in that regard.
That's wonderful. And what
to
about
put it in?
Go ahead.
Sorry, Tess, we got this delay happening. To put it in perspective, and don't quote me on these exact numbers, we had about 690 people infected. This is in a population of just under 2 million in Western Australia, and we had 9 deaths. And we don't have any active cases and haven't had any for months from my knowledge. And 9 deaths is too many in my book. And the other side of the country has had it a lot worse, particularly in Victoria, that's where Melbourne is the capital city there. And they've had a big resurgence recently, and they're in total lockdown at the moment. And it's like the complete polar opposite to Western Australia. And we have an advantage. We are known, Perth is the most isolated capital city in the world.
That's a fact. Factually, it's the furthest away from its closest neighbour.
Yeah. So that's an advantage and a disadvantage. One of the advantages is, of course, we have the border restrictions. It's very easy to control. Well, not easy to control, but we don't have that many people just turning up on our doorstep. And of course, the disadvantage is we're so far away from everybody. Like, NamesCon just happened. We can talk about that as well, because I was on NamesCon online, which I think was fantastic. But Rob's been to the physical NamesCons, and it's a bloody long way away. It's like a 24-hour journey to get there, and so you're dealing with jet lag and all that sort of stuff. So that's one of the disadvantages. But we also have the most sunshine per year out of any state or city in even Queensland. It's like our winters are a bit like a lot of countries' summers. So we don't have a lot of rain. We have enough rain, but water is a precious thing in Australia and in Western Australia in particular. So so we've got to take the good with the bad, but we wouldn't live anywhere else. It's like I've been all over the world, lots of places. So has Rob, and but that's just our preference. There's so many other beautiful places in the world that we've been to.
Sure.
But that's just Perth. And come on down.
You can tell that we love where we live. We can't help it.
No, it sounds so beautiful. I have never been to Australia. I would love to come. I also am in the Valley of the Sun in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yes.
And we had the hottest summer ever recorded. It was just so hard with COVID going on and on, and it wasn't managed well here, so we had to re-lock down a second time.
Oh, wow.
And then, but the first time it was pretty easy because I could go on hikes, I could go outside, the kids could too. But when it's 120 degrees out, I don't know Celsius, I'm sorry. But
that's about 46 degrees. That's 45, 46.
Yeah. We had 6 weeks where the low, which is like 2 a.m., never got under 90 degrees.
Wow. It
was suffocating, and I've never complained. I've been here 19 years. I've never complained. This was rough, and the weather turned just a few days ago. It just boom. Wow. I'm super grateful.
Yeah.
But so I'm sure out here in the US and most of the world, a lot of companies are really either having to turn online for the first time or really increasing their presence online or their competition levels online. Is that happening in Australia as well? How's the domain market shifting because of this?
I've seen an uptick. Everyone I've talked to has seen an uptick. There's been an interesting, and this is one of the fortunate sides of it as well that I've been seeing and talking with a lot of. We have 2 main companies in Australia, for those who don't know, who participate and run the drop catches, and that is drop.com.au and Netfleet. NETFLEET, netfleet.com.au. They're the 2 primary drop catching companies in Australia for expired domains, just dealing with the .com.au or .net.au or any other extension in our space. And chatting with a lot of those guys, they've had a big uptake of names being let go. So this is my theory, and this is just my theory. I might be wrong, but I think what's happening is a lot of domains are coming back into the marketplace because a lot of companies are suffering and they're having to lay off staff. So what is typically happening is the person who has gone and registered that domain name, they've used a particular email address like jane@whatever.com.au. They go and register that domain, and then all of a sudden that person is let go because companies are downsizing. That email gets taken off the list. The registration renewals go through to that email address for reminders. Their credit cards don't get updated with the registries, and the domains come back into the system. So I think that's been an additional increase in some of the quality names we've had dropping, because I'm seeing a lot of names come in and going, these are good, these are good. It's been a very, very active drop.
That literally happened like 2 months ago, Ed, with lifeinsurance.com.au. The biggest insurance company in Australia, they're called iSelect. They accidentally lost that name, let it go onto the drops.
Yep.
And it sounds to me, because .com.au is owned and operated by companies only doing business in Australia. Now, you're certainly a large country, large GDP, all that, but it's more likely that it's going to be run like a medium to small sized business than a large global corporation that's going to have DNS at the domain name and as an email address, and domain manager at google.com, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like it's less likely. And then if it's not the trademarked domain, but just something for their business, like lifeinsurance.com, anybody can come on and buy it.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's going to have some serious fallout.
We're seeing it, and I've been picking up quite a few three-letter.com.au's in the drops. Rob's been picking up some great names. Well, I just picked up a couple yesterday. These weren't in the drops, but they had expired. They had been registered, but they dropped at some stage. And ironically, you guys at Media Options, my apologies, mediaoptions.com, you have memorize.com for sale. If you look it up on your system test, you'll see.
Memorize.com. Okay. I'm looking it up
so
right now.
you have a look and you tell me how much it's listed for sale for.
We don't usually put prices on. We usually just say contact us.
Oh no, it's definitely on there.
No, then holler.
You've got a lot of prices on your website that I've seen recently.
So memorize.com definitely is not Media Options owned. It looks like maybe one of our names.
So it's a client name listed for sale on Media Options.
All right, we have it on here listed. Yep.
Yeah, so you've got it listed there for 250K.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I just registered and no offense to Americans, but the correct UK spelling with an S instead of a Z. So monetize with an S, but I also got the US spelling, which is with the Z. I hand registered both of those yesterday for $10 each. Memorize.
For $10 each, and were those, I assume, drops?
They weren't drops. I didn't get them in the drop system, but they had expired. They had been registered for several years each before. A lot of stuff falls through the cracks, as everybody knows. Sometimes you pick up names like this, and so to me, that's
you got that, Ed. That's crazy.
But the thing is, I covered my bases with both spellings, because a lot of people in Australia spell things the US way just because it's so prolific in writing and content and social media. They see the Z, so they don't spell it the British way.
Sure.
And I don't have a problem with either. It's like it's either or, whatever it is.
I think you got very lucky, Ed, because
that's me.
Last week I bought Pump, P-U-M-P, like, you know, pumping iron, Arnold Schwarzenegger, pump.com.au. I paid $5,000 for that. That was on the drops. So
Oh, I
a lot of
love that.
I love that name, right? I'm going to build a business out of that. I mean, that could be a crypto business, like pump crypto. It could be fitness, a gym. That's why I paid $5,000 for it. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I'm going to make a business out of it one day. But a lot of these names, even on the drops, we're still paying $5,000 or $10,000 for them, even at drop prices. Of course, I don't want to sell that name, but if someone offered me $50,000 to sell and pump, I'm not going to sell it because I want to make a business out of it. But so for you, Ed, to get a name for $10, like that means you're doing your homework. Like you must be on there every day, which is great.
I have a question. So I'm assuming that those domains had previously been registered. They went through for a .com or most TLDs, a domain is registered, somebody doesn't renew it, it goes through an expiration process. Typically that registrar has some type of auction relationship, whether it's their own auction like auctions.godaddy.com, or it's a partner or differently branded auction like namejet.com, right? And if no one buys it on those expired options, then it goes back to the registry. They hold it for a time period, typically 30 days, I believe.
Yeah.
And then anybody can buy it all new. And that's often called a drop when it's totally a brand new, it's dropped back to availability. So are you saying that those two domains, nobody noticed them on the expired, or do some domains not go through that process in Australia?
Oh no, they all go through it as far as I'm aware.
They do.
But this happens a lot because there's thousands a day dropping. And it's just like anything, things fall through the cracks. Some people see it, some people don't see the value in it. Like, you know,
it could be a Sunday.
Could be a Sunday. These things happen all the time.
Because we drop 1,500 to 2,000.com.au domain names every day, 7 days a week. So I do find that I pay less on a Sunday because there's less people watching.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely weekends are better. I've picked up some of my best names in the drops on the weekends because there's a lot of people who work for companies and businesses that are picking up these names and they're not working on Saturdays and Sundays.
Wait,
so in Australia, sorry, Tess, it happens at 11 o'clock at 1 o'clock Melbourne and Sydney time, and at 1:30 in the afternoon Melbourne and Sydney time, every day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Oh my gosh. And are you saying, so most people buying an expired domain on a .com are not buying on behalf of a company they work for. Most people buying an expired domain name are domain investors. It doesn't sound like that's the case in Australia. Or am I misunderstanding?
No, I would say still a high percentage. I think it's both. There's a high percentage who are buying who are domain
industry.
Yeah, they may be part of a larger business though that does it, because there's quite a few big companies, just like in the US, that has hundreds of thousands of names in their portfolios. So, but often those guys, they're not necessarily looking at the drops on the weekends. This isn't a hard and fast rule test, just to be clear. This is just our perception of what's been happening, and.
But I bet you're right.
I love it when you say that. I love it when Ed says that, because every time we're on the Domainer show, Ed normally says, don't listen to what Rob and I say. We don't know what we're talking about.
Just look, there are so many things. And look, here's why I love watching DomainSherpa, because I love watching Tess herd cats, because normally she's got people like Drew Rosner and Shane and all these other guys who come on regularly, and she's trying to herd these guys. Come on, stop smoking your joint, Drew. So you're trying to get all these guys together. So all I'm saying is, yeah, we love them.
That was for Drew, not the joint. I made for everyone listening, I made a little heart, but then I feel like I should qualify. That was for Drew, not the joint.
Yeah. And Drew, I hope you're enjoying your sardines today, mate. That's all right. That's a little in story from from a
we need a whole sardine-loving domainers network. I'm in, Drew's in, Ed's in.
We do.
Rob,
but anyway,
yeah.
Rob is saying that just because it's a little caveat, because I'm always a believer is do your research, don't go out. And I have these conversations with clients, friends, people when we start talking about domain names, and you tell them some of these stories and their eyes light up with dollar signs. Oh my God, no. And I say, whatever you do not under any circumstances run out and buy a whole stack of domain names, because 9 times out of 10, they're all just going to be crap. You're going to come back to me and say, Ed, I've got all these names. And I'm going to look at them and go, well, first of all, you've got 3 hyphens. And, all these, this happens all the time. And sometimes people listen to me, sometimes they don't. But buyer beware. You've got to do your research. You've got to know your market. Like we know the Australian market very, very, very well. And I know the international market pretty well because I play in that space as well. But it's like, you've got to do your research. And that's why things like NamesCon are fantastic.
Yeah, I want to hear about your takeaways. But first, I want to know about, in the Australian market, brandables versus exact match domains. I don't hear a lot about brandables in the Australian market. Is that just because I don't hear a lot about the Australian market? Because I'm in the US, or is that for another reason?
I would say yes to that, Tess. I think it's my opinion, again, is it's basically the same layout as international domain sales. There's a lot of companies in Australia that run off brandables, like the mattress companies are a classic one. What's the one that just sold? Is it duck.com.au? Was that one that happened just recently, Rob?
That was, no, they bought sleep.com.au.
Oh, sleep.com.au. So that's great.
And koala.com.au, that's a mattress company.
Yeah, Koala.
Ooh,
so that Koala.
And that's a great
let's use that. We'll use the Koala one as a classic example because that it's a generic term. It's the name of an animal in Australia. So you could use it to have something about koalas, or you can set up a mattress company, or you can set up a bedding, or I don't know, any other type of company that you want to brand with the name Koala.
Yeah, we do the same that on domainer.com.au.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty much the same. I don't think there's a lot of variation in that to how things operate in the .com space.
The koala.com.au brand is now valued at $500 million, according to the Australian Financial Review. And they started out just selling mattresses, and they had their domain name koalamattress.com.au a couple of years ago. Then they rebranded to koala.com.au, and now they're a $500 million mattress company.
Okay. They own the .com as well, to be clear.
They own koala.com as well.
They own both, which is a fantastic thing if you can do that. If you can cover your bases, that's great to own the .com. And again, it's a question is, if you're branding a company, is it purely for local market? You have no intention of going international? Because if you're going down the international path, you've got to have both. You've got to cover your bases in Australia.
Well, see, they're an Australian mattress company, and now they're going international, which is why they bought koala.com.
Yep.
Huh. Okay. Now, what about your valuation process? So say, name bio, I looked at the recent .com.au sales for the last year, and I think they had 11 results, which, call me crazy, I'm guessing a lot more than 11 domains were sold, right? But I also looked at where they're pulling from. So they are pulling from dnc.com.au and drop.com.au to some level. But, and NetFleet, you guys mentioned. But mostly it's like CEDO, Uni, whatever. So where do you guys get your comparable sales, and how are valuations developed down under?
The most reliable, to toot our own trumpet, the most reliable recent sales are available on the front page of domainer.com.au. Honestly, SDBot, NameBio, all those places are great for like .com sales, but there's nowhere that we trust for .com.au, and maybe it's a small market for all those guys, so they don't seem to bother to update it. I mean, Ed and I do it ourselves. Like people phone us up. Like our friend Luke phoned us up the moment he sold link.com.au for 66 grand. He goes, I just sold link.com.au for 66 grand. And so we had him on the show and we put his sale on our site. You won't find that sale recorded anywhere else on the internet.
It's on NameBio.
It is on NameBio, that one.
Yep.
Well, he must
it is. Yeah. Well, they get it from, that's the thing, they're picking it up from where we're putting it on.
Okay.
So, but I think because it's a smaller market, and I understand there's too much time and energy that you need to spend just in the .com.au market. And if that's where you're playing, then of course you're not going to worry about the .com.au. It's not, it's not a place. If you're not going to have any names registered there and you're not doing any business here, then why would you bother wasting your time looking it up? I think that's what it really comes down to, is it's in terms of importance for the international market. We don't really register on a lot of people's radar, which is fine with me.
Like for an Australian domain investor, what they need to do is just be active on the markets, on the expired in particular, and see what's going on. And it sounds like pretty much all of the, I just feel like you guys have a really special network down there where you really communicate with each other and you actually even talk on the phone and sometimes get together.
Yeah, we do.
Nobody
all the time.
does that. Like people in Phoenix don't do that.
I guess we have to, because no one else is talking about us. So we have to talk about ourselves. I mean, there'd be 50 to 100 of us in Australia that I would class as domain investors that, buy and sell domain names every week. But if we want to get technical, we wrote an article, when was it? About a year ago. I think I've got it up here.
On domainer.com.au.
Send me the link. I'll put it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll send you the link, but it basically says that 64,000 people or businesses in Australia own more than 10 domain names, .com.au domain names. And as far as I'm concerned, that means they're domain investors. If you're owning 10 or more domain names, you're investing in domain names. So if we look at that data, there's 64,000 Australians that are kind of domain investors.
Interesting. Yeah, I got the link here. All right. I'll put that up. That sounds interesting. And I see what you're saying, how you're qualifying. That's pretty reasonable. So how do you decide on evaluation? Say a company comes, so either you have a marketplace where you list your domains for sale, and
we don't really have a marketplace.
No, we don't have a marketplace per se. We don't have somewhere where they're just listed for sale.
I mean, you can see .com.au for sale on Afternic and on Flipper and on eBay, but it's not really the way it works. It's like I said, if you look up the who is, for anyone who owns a .com.au domain name, their email address is right there, and it has to be correct according to policy. So there are so many sales where someone's emailing the owner and then they're selling them the name and no one hears about. I mean, I'd say that's 80% of the sales.
80%. We're complete flip in that regard, Rob, I would say, to .com, because a lot of the .coms, they've got privacy turned on for who is. So you've got to go through either the aftermarket, you've got to go through Dan or FD or Cedo, whoever, to get the name, and you don't even know who the owner of the name is. Whereas we can reach out, and Rob's done that. Did you want to talk about that one that you just got not long ago, reaching out, and the guy was on our show? I'm not saying the name because...
Well, I run a domain brokerage firm, so I get 8 to 10 calls a day at dbr.com.au for companies who don't know how this all works, and they're saying, can I please buy a better domain name? In terms of one of my own businesses, I wanted to own phonenumber.com.au because I already owned phonenumbers.com.au. So I got the email address off the who is. I rang up Mark Phillips and I said, mate, can I offer you money? I said how much I paid, didn't I, Ed?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say.
I paid him thousands of dollars. I offered him thousands of dollars for phonenumber.com.au, and he told me the whole backstory, where our big phone company used to pay 10 grand a month for decades to rent the name off him. So, I mean, that's how we do it. We reach out and email and then come to a price agreement. We don't even use escrow.com hardly. I mean, it's very rare that we have to do that. It's especially as a domain broker, I kind of act as the escrow. So someone makes the payment for the domain name changes hands, and then everyone gets paid and everyone gets the domain name.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting. So how do you decide how you're going to value a domain? How do you decide when someone comes and asks, hey, I want to buy pump.com.au? How do you decide that?
We kind of go from the drop price. We call the drop prices in our circle of domain investors wholesale. Because if we're buying off the drop, we're kind of saying, and then we call the retail price the end user price. So for example, we have for a 3letter.com.au, in terms of wholesale, we buy them from $300 to $1,000 is what they normally go for on the drops for a 3letter.com.au, unless it's amazing, like, a word, a 3-letter word. But,
like pay.com.au, which
pay. For example, pay.com.au, that did sell for $168,000 less than a year ago. But everything else, every other 3-letter, like acronym or whatever, they normally get bought off the drops for between 300 and 1,000. They normally sell for between 5,000 and 8,000 to the end user. Yep. So, I mean, we've got many examples of that. It's like I bought pump.com.au. You would expect that to sell to wholesale on the drops to be bought for between 5 and 10K. But as we saw with link.com.au, we expect them to be sold for, $60,000 to $80,000 to end users. So I guess we all talk amongst ourselves. There's about 50 of us that have kind of created the Australian market for these things.
Yeah.
Accidentally.
Yeah. And look, it always comes down to the price that you're going to get is the price that the buyer and the seller agree on. And it's no different to the .com market. I mean, I look at some of the ones, the one that sold recently, that $300,000 name, cognitive awareness? No, cognitive.
Oh, yeah, no.
Oh, cognitive automation. Cognitive
everywhere.
automation.
He seems super interesting. I really want to meet him. What is his name?
Is it Pierre or is, I'm sorry if I got your name wrong.
Last name starts with the letter C. Maybe initials.
But it was
MC.
cognitive automation, cognitiveautomation.com. Now, he hand registered that domain name in 2016 and he just sold it. It's on a payment plan with the company that bought it. He sold it for $300K US and they're doing 3 payments of $100K each. Yes. Now, if anyone had told us in this circle here that name for a hand registration would have sold 4 years later for $300K, like, how do you value that? How do you say, well, that name is valued at that price? It's like he found the right buyer who saw the value in the name. It all comes down to the value is how much someone is prepared to pay for it based on what they see it in its entirety. And I've interviewed Andrew Miller, who was on last week on your show, and I interviewed him 10 years ago and chat to him occasionally. And he came up with a great, I don't think he didn't necessarily come up with this, but he said a domain name, you compare it into a vacant block of land in Times Square. Okay. You can either have a hot dog stand on that vacant block, or you can put a 100-story high-rise building. So what has more value, the high-rise building or the hot dog stand? Same piece of land, but what is it being used for? So I think someone who has the vision for a particular name like Pump, it could be a multi-billion dollar business. So is that worth $300,000 to them or $3,000?
True.
So I think
I agree and disagree. I mean, not all domains are Times Square quality, right?
No, of course.
And frankly, Joseph Cyprian, Joseph Cypret, his name,
Joseph.
he looks like an absolutely brilliant gentleman. I would love to have him on the show. But cognitive automation is not a Times Square domain.
You wouldn't think
probably
so.
cognitive.com probably isn't, because it's just too weird. But that doesn't mean that you can't build something on the outskirts of Chicago that
you can build a skyscraper.
It can still be phenomenally lucrative. And what he did was a tremendous amount of research. He combined with patience, with having the ability to negotiate with the right buyer, to the ability to communicate that value, but also to stand his ground and know that value to them.
Yeah, that's an amazing sale, to sell the dream and to be patient. Yeah.
And if you don't have that combination, plus in a market that actually has that kind of money, where what you build would justify that investment and benefit to that degree, right? I mean, that's the real difference, and why he did it right.
And that's a good example. And if we bring that back to .com.au Australian domain names, I guess what Ed's saying roundabout as well is it depends on who the end user is. If we can see that they're going to make $10 million out of it, then we're going to want $100,000 instead of $50,000 for the domain name.
But it's not who the end user is, it's what the end user market is.
True.
Right?
True.
Because it doesn't matter if Amazon buys
true.
or somebody who wants to get in and compete with Amazon, is how much money can they make in that space?
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, you're never going to be able to get $100,000 for a lawn mowing name. You know, I get it's relative, right? It depends on the market.
Of course it is. Everything's relative. So, and that's why doing your research and understanding the market is a critical part of pricing the name.
So in summary, the way you value, the way you come up with a negotiation price for a .com AU is you read domainer.com.au, you look over any recent public sales you can find, you talk to other investors in your space, and you look at that market and understand how they would utilize that. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, it does.
Talk to Rob, talk to Ed.
Obviously, the same as in the real estate market, you've got to do comparable sales. So that's why the comparable sales on Domainer help other domain investors sell their domain names, because they can say, well, this name sold for this much and this market is similar. So I guess that's how we do it here.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, you guys are cool. All right, let's talk about NamesCon. Ed, everyone who saw me at NamesCon saw me all like straight from the gym in a baseball cap, and it was your fault.
Why was it my fault?
On Wednesday and Thursday, I really didn't participate a whole lot in the socials or the networking lounge or anything like that, because I was very busy working with the NamesCon production team prepping for the auction. Since I kind of managed the show during the auction, it was just really different, and it was a new thing for the production team, so it was pretty time consuming. So on Friday, I had the time for that, but I went to the gym and super social distantly. And the minute I got back from the gym, you and I had been trying to connect, and you were so gracious. You're like, it's 1 a.m. I think I don't know what you said, but you made me feel very, you said you hadn't shaved for days.
Yeah, well, you were saying you've just come back from the gym, and I was saying, well, look, I'm in my tracky dacks for tracksuit pants, for those in America, I don't know if you call it tracky dacks.
That's an Australian.
So that's an Australian saying. So I was in my tracky dacks, hadn't shaved for 3 days because I've been bloody watching NamesCon like a zombie up at weird hours of the morning. But we wanted to have a bit of a chat. I also had to go down to the lobby of our apartment, because at 1 o'clock in the morning, me talking in our apartment was just going to be too loud. So I'm down in this weird little section where all the telecom power cable network is behind me on the wall. It was just weird. I almost felt like a bit of an old pervert or something. It's like I'm down there talking on my phone. It was, but it was nice chatting. And
we had such a nice conversation, and it was our first face-to-face conversation. I really appreciated it. But then once we had the conversation, then like everybody's hitting me up during it. And then I, I'm finally connecting with people I hadn't been able to connect with. So I went the whole day. I went until like 8 o'clock at night.
Okay. I see what you're saying there.
Gym equipment. That's great.
And I'm just in my hat. I don't know what. Yeah, it wasn't great. It wasn't pretty.
Keeping it real. Tess is keeping it real. But the reason that happened was, of course, is you appear, and Rob wasn't on it, so he didn't see, but they had all the virtual networking rooms laid out with tables. So you see someone's head appear in a particular room. It could be in the one-on-one room. We were in one of the one-on-one rooms, or the secret room. I think we were in the secret room, which makes it even weirder.
One-on-one room. I got there first, and before Ed, somebody else got on and was like, "Hey, Tess."
Yeah.
And as soon as it got off, it was boom, 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 and I loved it.
Sorry.
I thought the social aspect. Don't be sorry. I thought the social aspect was amazing. It really exceeded all of my expectations.
It was brilliant.
Yeah.
It was brilliant.
What did you like? What did you get out of it? And how was was it the South? I feel like it wasn't just the Asia track. It was the something.
Oh yeah, no. I think there was the Europe track, and there was the South Asia track. I can't remember what it was called now.
Yeah, I think it was South Asia.
Which was mainly India. It was mainly people from India, which was the fascinating thing. I think that half the people who were on the call were from India, or on the conference were from India. There was a lot of people from India, which is great because I own a lot of .in domains as well. So I found out some cool things by chatting with some of the top guys in the Indian space.
Right.
Because I own names like solarpanel.com, .in, solarpanels.in, waterpurifiers.in. I own a lot of good premium Indian names that I've had for 10 or 12 years now.
No kidding. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's a side story. But I think how the whole thing was set up, and I really, really hope if you're listening, and particularly fascinating watching people like Drew and the head of NamesCon, what's his name? I've forgotten.
Zoran.
Help me out here, Tess. Zoran, both sitting there smoking joints, doing this recorded interview. I was cacking myself. I don't know whether that's an American translation to laughing.
That's another Australian thing.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
I was laughing my head off at these two, and they were talking about cannabis domains and stuff like that.
Super informative. And you know what? Let's get real. This is what happens at all the shows.
Yes.
You aren't all sitting in the room when it happens, and it's cool that you can.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think it was as close as you could get to actually being there without all the partying and the drinking, which is also one of the downsides of the next morning when you go to these things, is trying to get up. But I think the good thing is, like, we didn't have to attend the sessions, because if you didn't get to a session, most of them were being recorded. So I went and watched some of them later because it was too early.
Yep.
It was too early in the morning for me to catch them. But I watched some of the ones who wanted to live. We've got 8 people locked in to come on the Domainer show that I chatted to and said, look, come on the show. Blah, blah. So in terms of networking, it was fantastic. I think it was just great. I think if there's once COVID's passed, and hopefully that soon, if they have the physical one and they have the virtual one, best of both worlds, because it's going, harder for us in Perth to get to US on a regular basis. That's my opinion anyway. So, but I think it was fantastic. Great job done by everybody. It ran very, very smoothly for the first time that was done. Hardly any hiccups that I experienced. And the support was great, because sometimes I couldn't work out a couple of things. I went into chat, and superb, really good.
Great.
Very, very nice to hear from a different perspective. And I agree with you on all points. So it's nice to know, no matter where you were in the world, that's pretty positive.
Top job.
I have a hard stop in 15 minutes. What I want to know about are your own portfolios, your favorite names, maybe lessons learned, and also what you've bought or sold recently. Let's start out. Favorite names. Go.
My favorite name is it's audiobooks.com.au. I love the audiobook space. We've partnered with audiobooks.com, which is the second largest audiobook seller in the world outside of Audible. So love audiobooks. I got that in the drops 10 years ago for about 3,500 Australian. So that's a one that I love, but I've got lots of names sort of similar to that. One I just picked up the other day, again, this was hand reg. Rob calls me the hand reg king, which is probably, which is probably, I picked up.
You let them fall through the net and you grab them for $10 and you sell them for thousands. It's gold.
Yep.
Business model.
It is. I picked up voicesearch.com.au 2 weeks back. Hand reg, $10, massive growth area, and a whole associate. I've got voice search SEO, voice search optimization, all sorts of names tied in around that. So that's a growth market. Because I'm in the, go for it, Tess.
No, finish first.
I was saying, because I'm in the space that all these things sort of come to me because I'm in the digital marketing space. A lot of names I have are sort of around that, around podcasting, like I own podcastadvertising.com.au, podcaster.com.au, things like that. So anything that I'm interested in that's related to the businesses that we do, I'm seeing the use case and the value of these maybe more than some other people do initially. So I'm, probably getting a little bit ahead of the curve, because voice search is not new, but it's heading to be a massive part of how people are finding, like you can see behind me, that little, get my finger this way, that little dot right above my finger there, that's a Google Home. We use that all the time. We're just sitting here as a family and say, what time is something, or find something, or, so we're using that all the time. So voice search is huge. Anyway, that's just a few.
So I get that you have an advantage because of your expertise. I think that's excellent. I think a lot of investors like to purchase within a space that they really know and understand, not only the Australian space, but also, say, the voice search space or whatnot. But are portfolio sales pretty much that, like, basically the general market is most portfolio sales don't really go over well. Usually you're buying one domain, not even a package of related domains. It's just one domain. Is that the same usually in Australia?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Just checking.
That's my Rob, have you had different experiences with portfolios? I haven't myself. I
haven't heard of many portfolio sales. I mean, they're every now and then, but it's mostly just one good domain name. I mean, sometimes if I'll sell a one word, and then I've got 4 or 5 others that are, closely associated with it. We say we throw them in for free. If you buy this name for $10 million, you get these 5 for free.
No kidding. Wow. Okay. So you sell them just like everybody else. Okay. Back to favorites. You want to talk a little more about favorite either domains, or that I like, not just favorite domains, but your own favorite niches within the space for whatever.
Are you finished, Ed? You got more?
Oh, I could go all day. I'll finish up on one more sector that I have a lot of VPN names.
Oh yeah, you do.
I've probably got about 80% of the Australian market for any related high search keyword term related.
Ed, don't
to VPN.
You own freevpn.com.au?
Yeah, that's freevpn.com.au. That's a great one. That brings, and I've partnered with a lot of the VPN companies, affiliates. I think this is a big opportunity that a lot of domainers who are just parking their names, they don't associate their names or partner with affiliate companies. There's so much more money, and then all they have to do is turn off their Whois privacy. So if someone really wants to get the name, they can just look you up on Whois and contact you. But there's a lot of people who are making cents on the dollar instead of multiple dollars of parked income, not doing just straight affiliate arbitrage.
And what amount of time does it take for you to, like, I'm looking now at freevpn.com.au forward somewhere else. What amount of time does it take for you to set up the affiliate relationship and the website?
Well, if I've already got the account, like a lot of my VPNs will go to, say, like NordVPN, they'll go through to a company like that. If I've already got the account, 2 minutes. I can register the domain, change the DNS to my affiliate link, done and dusted. That's it. Cash register rings on a daily basis, and I'm not exaggerating. So you can have that if you've got traffic domains. And if you're just looking for the PPC money, that's you're just losing out. You're leaving so much on the table, as people like to say.
Is this the right place for me to say good on ya?
It's great.
Good on you, mate. You can say good on you, mate.
Good on ya, mate.
Good on you, mate. But that's, everyone does things differently. But I just think for those who haven't thought of that yet, and some things seem obvious to me that maybe aren't obvious to others, and vice versa for stuff that people could tell me. I think affiliate stuff is, and I'm not talking about building affiliate websites. I'm just talking about direct linking a great domain that has traffic to an affiliate program. There's no hassles.
Argue with 2 minutes? Nobody can argue with 2 minutes. You can't.
No.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's it. Over to you, Rob. I've just got to switch my headphones over here because my earpods are dying. You go.
Yeah, I've been investing in a lot of premium one words. So I own grey.com.au, Grey, and I've turned that into like an umbrella company that owns a bunch of businesses under it. So you'll see that company owns escooter.com.au. So we sell e-scooters from that. It owns CoinCap, which is a crypto news site, coincap.com.au. Some of my other good domains I own, renewable.com.au. I'm going to build an energy site there. I own maybe.com.au. I want to start an insurance company called whoops.com.au. For whoops, I had an accident, so I own whoops.com.au. I own admin.com.au, eagle.com.au, protected.com.au, drone.com.au, crave.com.au, statistics.com.au, bourbon.com.au because I love drinking bourbon.
As the sign says behind there.
Some of mine.
It's really quite endless, and I think the opportunities are endless too. Well, we're launching next week. This is a shameless plug. We're launching videoads.com.au next week. So we're targeting the whole video production and running ads on YouTube, which is obviously in my marketplace. But I've owned that domain, videoads.com.au, for 8 years. And I was waiting for the...
Are they sold? Video ads are sold differently in Australia, you think, than elsewhere, or no?
No, same deal. It's basically someone wants an ad created for their business to promote what they do. So we will create the ad production, and then we will actually manage the advertising campaigns running those ads on YouTube. Okay. We'll do Facebook and other places, but cool. YouTube is the primary place. Okay. But say that name I registered 8 years ago, waiting for this opportunity for the stars to align and the right people to come in. And that's the thing. There's a lot of patience involved with domain names. It's not necessarily just an overnight success. You've got to have the long-term vision. And like love Rick Schwartz. I've been following him since as long as I can remember, and he's been on the show a few times. Patience. You've got to have a long-term vision of what you want the domain to be. And Rob and I, we're talking, I can speak for Rob, saying when we register a name, we always see a business opportunity behind what could that name be used for as a business. I probably have 2% of my portfolio that are just, what would you call them? Vanity names or, but pretty much all the names are, if there's no business behind it that I can see, then I'm not interested in getting the name.
Which I think is a little bit of a curse for most domain investors. I think that my silly small brain thinks that I'm going to develop 1,700 businesses because that's how many domain names I have.
He probably will, knowing Rob. He's that sort of guy. Like he's a high intensity, high action guy. So
I wanted a screenshot to tweet, and that was the moment right there.
Was it? Good.
Great.
You guys are hilarious. I think you're really, really interesting. I like how you see your space. I like how you have your own space, and the community that you create. I'm so glad that we finally connected, and I hope you guys come on a lot. It was funny that, because I can do a DomainSherpa review that's, say, just the West Coast. And I've got 8 people in West Coast time zones that all want turns being on the show, and I want them on, right? But the interesting difficulty with doing an Australian review is that you guys can't guess each other's prices because you all already know.
Yeah,
that community.
That's true.
And now I see it's because it's part of your valuation process. So we'll figure it out. Maybe if India is on the right time, maybe we'll find somebody in India, one of you guys, maybe, somebody in around China, like maybe Hong Kong, see who we can bring in. That would be really fun, to do.
Absolutely.
The early morning and late night for me.
I mean, DomainSherpa has been important to all of us, even here in Australia, because we've compared the American market and kind of created the Australian market off that. So I think it's great, Tess, what you've done with taking over the DomainSherpa. I was on DomainSherpa about, I don't know, 6-7 years ago with Michael Seiger. And
it wasn't that long ago, mate.
Wasn't it?
It wasn't that long ago.
No, I'm with Rob on this. I remember when you were on, because
it wasn't that long ago. 6 or 7 years ago. Seriously?
No,
I think it might have been, mate.
Media Options bought the show 3 years ago in this November.
I'm looking.
Whatever Mike taught me, somehow every single time I was getting stuck with a link to your show.
Oh, there you go.
So
I was just getting started then.
I guess.
You were on June 5th, 2017.
Boom.
In seeing my life move so fast, that's 7 years.
That's 7 years in Rob's dog life.
Well, don't be a stranger. You will be on much sooner than that next time. I'm sorry I have to go because I would love to talk
No, that's good.
forever.
All good.
Let's say goodbye
Thanks for
to
calling
the
me on that.
network, and we'll see y'all.
All right.
Thanks, Tess.
Bye for now. See ya.